What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. This video will be doing the third out of the 4 DIYs on this car for the 100,000 mile service, and this one will be changing the coolant. So coolant's not as straightforward as it could be on this. There is no like petcock valve on the bottom, and the radiator sits directly above the intercooler, so the lower radiator hose is kind of in the middle of the car. So there's kind of, you have your hot side intercooler piping going from the turbo to the intercooler, blocking your way from the bottom. You kind of can get to it, but it's hard to show on camera, and it's really hard to see what you're doing. So I'm going to go at it from above, which means you have to remove the intake box. Now, I've already started doing that, but you know, I don't have the factory intake anymore. I have this CTS one, but you just remove your intake box. So in this case, I need to detach it from this center grommet here. And I've started taking out the screws, so you just have to unscrew all these here. Yours, if you have the factory one, the top will just pop off. You need to unplug your mass airflow. And I can't remember the process exactly, but I do have a video on the channel for that if you want to check that out. When I installed this intake, it shows the removal process. I'm going to go ahead and finish taking this out. The only reason I have to take this top off is because there's a screw inside holding the whole thing down. So I've got to get that out so that I can pull the box out, and then I should have pretty clear access straight down, and we'll be able to get to the hose. So with that box out of the way, you can see the hose pretty easily right here. So it's just got a little, right here, you can see where my finger's pointing. There's kind of like a little quick release clamp. You pull that up, pull the hose back, and the coolant will drain out of there. You can take the whole thing out. So I found it pretty much impossible. I spent hours trying to get the lower radiator hose off, but I just unplugged at the water pump, and I guess I'm draining the coolant from the block essentially, and it's just going to have to work. I'm going to try to squeeze as much out through the hoses as I can, and I will fill back up from there. It's not as good as I was hoping, but that hose is on there. I tried prying it off. I've been pulling on it for over an hour. I've heated it up. I've sprayed silicone spray in there, and I can't make it come out. So I accept defeat. Okay, so what I was saying about getting it at the water pump is, if you see right there, there's the water pump, and you can see the hose disconnected from it. It's very hard. There's not a lot of space down here. I am on the ground. But right here. So we pulled this, and basically all the water from the engine, this is the lowest point of the cooling system, so it did get most of it out. The radiator obviously is still full, but I think the block, if I'm thinking this through correctly, the block should be empty. We got quite a bit of coolant out. I would venture to say probably like a gallon. So I will definitely, at the end of the video, we'll see how much coolant we got out. I'm going to go ahead and put this hose back on. And I think basically, since I have 2 gallons essentially, because I have a gallon of concentrate and a gallon of distilled water, got to mix it 50-50. I will, depending on how much we use, I'll go and drive it for maybe a day or two, you know, maybe in a week, and just next weekend I'll do the same thing again, and that will that'll be pretty good. It's not as good as being able to drain the entire thing, but I fought with that hose like crazy, and I could not get it off, and I really did not want to break anything. All right, so at this point, I've reattached the hose at the water pump, and I'm going to go ahead and add my coolant to my reservoir here, the overfill canister, and we're going to go till we're about to the full point. Then we're going to get in the car, do the coolant bleed procedure, and add any more coolant as necessary. But actually, before we do that, there is one thing that I do want to do. Right here, I have a new coolant bleed screw, and this is brass. This will just replace the old plastic one. I don't know how much these really do for long-term reliability, but it certainly can't hurt, and it was like $2 or something. We're just gonna leave it like that right now. while we go ahead and add coolant and do the bleed procedure. We are using Xerox by Valvoline G48. It is the same thing as the BMW coolant. It says BMW, Mercedes, Mini, Tesla, and Volvo. And I know some people might have a problem with that, but it will work and it's not going to cause any problems. Now I'm going to use what's in the distilled water jug first because I would rather keep it, store it long term in that jug. So. Okay, I think the full mark is about the halfway point, so we're going to go a little bit more. So at this point, with the car in accessory mode, the fan on the lowest setting and the heat on the highest setting, you'll want to push the accelerator and hold it down until you hear the water pump engage, and that's how you initiate the coolant bleed procedure. Also, at this point, you may get a low coolant level warning, and the reason is that you are circulating coolant through the system now and pushing out the air. And if you get that, you'll just want to keep adding coolant to where the reservoir is about half full. You can hear the coolant recirculating, working its magic, and we are low. There is no more coolant in the reservoir, so we're going to go ahead and add more. I don't know how well that sound is translating onto the camera, but you can hear that pump whirling and fluid being pushed through. See some bubbling up here at the bleed screw. We want to tighten that down just a tad so we don't get more coolant coming out. We're just going to keep an eye on that level. We want it to be right around the middle of the expansion tank. It will continue to go through this process for the next, 12, 15 minutes. You just want to keep checking your coolant level and topping it off as needed. I'm not going to show you the whole procedure because it will be kind of boring. But while it's doing this, I'm going to go ahead and put in the air box back in while I keep an eye on that level. So I put the air box in. The bleed process is still running. I told you it could take like 15 minutes to run this. I'm going to go ahead and dump the old coolant into this. So I used almost the whole gallon. There was like a tiny bit left in the bottom, and I just added it back into the other container. So I pretty much used a whole gallon. So we're going to see how much I was actually able to collect coming out of this and what it looks like versus the new coolant. So we saw just a couple minutes ago what the new coolant looked like. Blue water, basically. We're going to see what the old coolant looked like. So I've collected almost a whole gallon. Now that I'm thinking about this, I'm not really sure this is a fair comparison because this has been used to collect transmission fluid, gear oil, and all kinds of things. So, that looks nasty, but you can also see, like, when you turn it, the oil and stuff that's in there mixed with it. So, not sure because they separate, but there's obviously some impact to the color happening here, and this is some really nasty looking stuff, one way or the other. So this isn't quite how you're supposed to change your coolant fluid on the F30, but this worked, and I was able to get it done. So if you're having issues with that lower radiator hose, there is an alternative, and you can still do the process. You just may not be able to get quite as much coolant out. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.